Maura? I can't hear.
Yes, Congressman Pallone.
I'm sorry, I'm a little late. I just ran into the office. I drove back from Washington.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. We are just getting ready to go live, and we are starting off with a video and then introductions, and you'll be up. So stay tuned.
Okay.
We are gonna build back better.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our country.
The Build Back Better agenda is an understanding that a democracy that works is essential for a government that works.
We're gonna pass this infrastructure bill. We are going to put into place some sustainability measures so we can address climate change.
Really tackle the climate change issues in an aggressive way that really solves our climate crisis and at the same time puts workers to work.
We are making a once-in-a-generation investment in good-paying jobs and the modernization of roads, bridges, transit, rail, and drinking water systems.
This bill will save you and me and all of us money for years to come.
A future that is inclusive and available and accessible to everyone.
Under the leadership of Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris administration, we will have this happen. And so let's make history.
We won't! We won't! We won't!
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We'd like to welcome you all to this timely and informative webinar. We're going to be talking about Build Back Better, what that means for New Jersey workers, families, our kids, seniors, and people all across the country. A special welcome to our panelists tonight. We have with us tonight Congressman Frank Pallone, who is from New Jersey's 6th Congressional District, Chair of House Energy and Commerce. We have Peter Chen, Policy Analyst with New Jersey Policy Perspective, Jay Wilson of Melanated Moms, and my colleague, Yarrow William Cole, New Jersey Citizen Action's Workplace Justice Director. I'm sure all of them and the comments they will make this hour well worth your time, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us. The debate on Build Back Better has been going on for several months. If you are like some of those on the call here today, you know, you're watching the news minute by minute. But the real story of Build Back Better is not reflected in the latest headline on the process. The real story is how historic this legislation will help transform and improve the lives of workers, families, kids, seniors, all across the nation now and for years to come. That is the real story. Build Back Better is a values statement that puts people first, providing supports for the working poor, for families, for children, for seniors, by expanding access to affordable health care, expanding access to child care, early education, improving maternal health care, paid family leave, and on and on. These are important initiatives that we so desperately need. So what does all of that mean to you? As our friend who's with us tonight, Congressman Pallone, likes to say, he doesn't like it to be abstract. And we hope tonight you take away from this two things. One, a real sense of what this will mean for you, your family, your neighbor, and what we can expect in the days to come with your help. So there is no one here better to answer those questions than our first guest, Congressman Frank Pallone, who's been a true healthcare champion and a fighter to lower prescription drug costs and a leading voice on many of these issues that we're talking about tonight. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Pallone. You're still muted, Congressman Pallone.
That good?
That's good.
I think they mute me automatically. So I wanted to thank Maura, and I wanted to thank New Jersey Citizen Action. I'm just going to turn my phone off here a second. I guess I forgot to do that. For having this roundtable. And I really appreciate Maura's comment about not focusing on the process. And I know that's hard because, you know, when you listen to the media, they all talk about the process and who's for this and who's for that. But I really wish, you know, that we could get away from that. And if you want to ask a question about process tonight, you can. But, you know, I don't think anybody really knows. I mean, all we really know is the House passed this bill, which is what we're talking about. And I think we can safely say that it's not going to change much, particularly with regard to the healthcare provisions that we're going to focus on tonight, and that we can fully expect that the Senate will pass this, you know, relatively soon, you know, whether that's the end of this month or in January, I don't know for sure. But, you know, I agree with Maura that, you know, focusing on who's for what or what the process isn't really helpful at this point. So I wanted to talk about the healthcare provisions, and I want to start by talking about prescription drugs. We know that the costs of prescription drugs keep going up, and that was just as true, if not more true, during the COVID period over the last couple of years than it even was before. And some people might be surprised by that because they'll say, well, you know, during COVID, why are drug companies raising their prices? And the answer is because they can. You know, in other words, if they have an exclusivity because they have a patent, there's no competition, and so the marketplace doesn't really work, right? And if it's a generic drug, oftentimes they try to monopolize those as well. And so that's why we've always felt that if you want to achieve more affordable drugs and more accessibility, which I think are linked. I mean, tonight, Maura, as you know, we're talking about affordability and accessibility, and they're linked. If you can't afford the drug, then it's not accessible. And I love when people say, well, you have access even if the price is high. Well, not really, because if I can't afford to pay the price, how do I have access, right? So this is what we're talking about. And so for many years, myself and others have said, look, we have to have negotiated prices. We have to let the federal government negotiate prices with the drug companies, which is done in every developed country. There isn't a single one, whether it's Western Europe, it's Japan, it's Australia, they all negotiate with the companies. So this allows Medicare to negotiate, or the Department of Health and Human Services under Medicare, to negotiate prices for a subset of drugs. It does not include the drugs that are patented, right? I mean, we wanted to do that, but it's not. But there are many drugs, and some of the most widely used and some of the ones that have had the biggest price increases that are not patented. The exclusive period for their patent has expired, but they somehow still get around and don't make those drugs available generically. And so people are still paying very high prices without negotiation. So that's the most important thing. But in addition to that, we have what we call an inflation rebate that says that if drug companies unfairly increase their prices beyond inflation for Medicare beneficiaries and those with private insurance, under the bill, they have to return the money in a form of rebate to the federal government. Now, you might say, well, okay, the federal government gets the money back, but what about me? Well, the bottom line is that we believe that this is a major factor in bringing down costs because, you know, the drug companies don't want to give those rebates. And so that it'll be a major factor in bringing down costs. And then the third thing is that we have a cap on the cost for prescription drugs under Medicare, an annual out-of-pocket limit beginning at $2,000. And this is, you know, divided for each month. And so, and again, you might say, well, that's a lot of money for me to put out $2,000 a year, but you'd be surprised how many seniors are putting out a lot more than that over an annual period. And so it is significant as well. So that's the prescription drug. You know, again, I'm trying to generalize because I'm supposed to only talk for 5 minutes. I may already be beyond my 5 minutes more, but I did want to mention one thing about insulin. Insulin is is a generic drug, but the price keeps going up. So we also have specifically for insulin that it would be negotiated, but the cost sharing has to be the lesser of $35 per month or 25% of the negotiated price. So essentially, I think you can think of this as no one would be paying more than $35 out of pocket for insulin, which is significant because so many people do take it. Now, let me talk about a few other things. I was one of the original people that drafted the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. We envisioned that we were going to have to go back and provide more generous subsidies than when we first passed it 12 years ago or whatever. That's what the Democrats did. We managed to increase the subsidy for people and increase the people that are eligible for a subsidy based on income. And this bill extends that. And so the reason I say that's important is because right now, for example, in New Jersey, 9 out of 10 people in our state right now qualify for assistance, so that if they buy their insurance on the marketplace, because they don't get it on the job, right? They qualify for plans that cost $10 or less per month. Highly significant, right? Now, that was because, people could pay thousands of dollars out of pocket on the individual market for health insurance. And now 9 out of 10 consumers in our state who go on the marketplace to get their insurance are paying less than $10 a month because of the subsidy assistance, if you will. And that will continue under the Build Back Better Act. The other thing, which is not as important to New Jersey, but I like to mention it, is that many of the red states have not expanded Medicare the way New Jersey did. And so they have people that fall through the cracks and aren't even eligible for the ACA subsidies, because if the state didn't expand Medicare and they're in that income bracket, they're not eligible for the ACA. We change that and we make them eligible for the ACA. Not important for New Jersey, because we've done a lot of good things under Governor Murphy in the legislature to make things easier for people in terms of affordability, accessibility, but unimportant others. Now, a few other things. Medicare. We, as many of you know, unless you have some kind of, unless you've applied for a Medicare plan that has things like hearing, dental, whatever, or vision care, which some people have, but under basic fee-for-service Medicare, you don't have those benefits. And so we wanted to do all three, but we were at least able to get a hearing benefit. So under Medicare now, under this bill, Medicare is expanded, Medicare Part B, to cover hearing aids, and also that you can go and see an audiologist or a hearing doctor. What do they call it? What is a hearing doctor? Oncologist, I guess. Oncologist, and you can get have your hearing checked, and then you can get a hearing aid. It would be covered. Few other things. The Children's Health Insurance Program is made permanent, the CHIP program. Maternal health. We have one of the highest rates of maternal mortality in the world. Of developed countries, I should say. Terrible. And so what we do is we do a number of things. Most importantly, if pregnant women are on Medicaid, they can keep their health insurance for the first year postpartum. There are other things too, but I won't get into them. And the last thing I wanted to mention, because I also think is very significant, is home and community-based care. A lot of people, until they have a loved one, who has to go to a nursing home or some kind of post-hospital care, long-term care, they don't realize that Medicare does not cover more than like a month of nursing home care after you leave the hospital, and doesn't cover home health care for more than a month either. And so we want to keep people at home. And so what we've done in this bill is invest $150 billion to expand access to quality home-based services and care for millions of older Americans and people with disabilities, so that they don't have to be institutionalized. That's not only not going to a nursing home, not having to go to rehab facility, not even have to go to hospital, which is very important. So I'll leave it at that, because otherwise, as you know, Maura, I could talk about this all night, and I think you want to hear from some of the others and take some questions. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Congressman Pallone. And we hope to have an opportunity to keep hearing about these things for many, many months as this bill is passed. As you said, there is just so much in it. We wanted to give people a flavor of how many different components, just even in the healthcare there are. I mean, I look at the people I know in my life and my family, and I can, say people by name are going to benefit from each of those policies that you talked about. So, it is really a historic and transformative moment. We really want people to understand that. And we look forward to diving deeper as, we move through this process. But really, thank you for being such a champion of all the things that you have been for us. And we look forward to continuing that. So thank you. We're going to ask now a woman who doesn't really need any introduction to many of you, Yarrow William Cole, who is my colleague at New Jersey Citizen Action. She is the Workplace Justice Director and leads the New Jersey Time to Care Coalition. Yarrow and her team and partners are the team of people that are largely responsible for the fact that New Jersey has earned sick days and paid family leave. So without any further delay, I'd like to turn it over to Yarrow.
Thanks, Maura. I'm going to be pretty quick. I'm cognizant that our other guest, Jay, has to hop off really soon. I'm going to pass it to you really quick, Jay, after I'm done. But just want to give folks a little picture, some of the things that Congressman Pallone mentioned. I want to dig a little deeper. And just like the healthcare provisions, we've been working really hard on showing our Congresspeople how much the issues of the care economy, the investments in the Build Back Better package really matter to workers and families and children. And just the same as with healthcare, it's about affordability and accessibility, right? And so when I say the care economy, it's just a way to package together all these components that address our ability as individuals and as a society to care for ourselves and our loved ones. And this is work that is largely invisible and often shouldered by women, and especially low-income workers, often Black and brown and immigrant workers. So just to kind of sum it up, the care infrastructure pieces are passing the first national paid family and medical leave program, which has been in the crosshairs. We really want to see that go through because it shouldn't matter where you live. You should be able to afford to take time off to heal and bond with new babies and care for ill loved ones, right? And then also investments in childcare and early learning. And that means universal pre-K 3 and 4, which is a huge deal for my family. Also just generally affordable childcare so that really the majority of families would have to pay no more than 7% of their income for childcare. And then the other piece, which Congressman Pallone mentioned, protecting and paying our care workers, right? So these investments in in-home and community care, and that's what is allowing seniors and individuals with disabilities to receive the services that they need in their home. And then there's, of course, other components, right, that make up really this idea of the care infrastructure that Jay will also touch on. And we're going to show a video in a little bit about some of the rallies that we held over the summer, where we're really trying to lift up, how these issues are so overdue. These are really transformative because they lower costs, right, for everyday Americans, healthcare, childcare. And they also pay our workers, our childcare and our care workforce workers better wages. So it's an investment not only in our economy now, and I think I heard Nancy Pelosi say this phrase, children learning and parents earning is a good formula, right? And it also helps women be able to stay in the workforce, as we've seen so many drop out, especially recently. I just want to comment that it's also an investment in our future, right? And because this is actually the week that marks 50 years since President Nixon vetoed the bill for universal affordable childcare, where so many children, families, and women were left behind. We have an opportunity to learn from the past and really right those wrongs and put ourselves on a path towards the care economy and put people first. So, I want to comment also, it's great that we have the infrastructure bill that's going to work on bridges, roads, and tunnels. That's huge. But we also have a crumbling or really essentially a non-existent care infrastructure. And so it's time, we have to make these deep investments in our families and our workers. And we need this care economy because it's our economy, and it needs to work for us. So with that, I want to pass it back to Morad, who's going to pass it to Jay.
Thanks so much, Yarrow. Amen to all of that. And I want to just introduce to you Jay Wilson. She is the founder and CEO of Melanated Moms. She is a maternal health advocate, something that is critically important, and she is working hard with partners across the state and across the country to ensure that we close the gap in maternal health outcomes for Brown and Black women. She's a published author of Find Your Roar, and she's a special state officer on the New Jersey Maternal Care Quality Collaborative. And we're really pleased to have her here because you know what? No one's healthy. Kids aren't healthy. It all starts with moms. So Jay, I'd like to turn it over to you. Really happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. That was so nice. Thank you for the opportunity to share and to also be a part of this work. I think it's very critical, like you were saying, to make sure that we are counting parents and putting them at these tables, because very often a lot of the moms that I support, they feel that they don't have a say-so. They don't have a way to make ends meet unless someone else shows up for them. So, a lot of the work that we do is showing them how to advocate for themselves and how to be at that table and understand what all of these public policies are in order to create the change that they need, right? So when it comes to Build Back Better and childcare, right? I have so many moms who are really afraid of falling behind on their rent or on their, their food or anything that they need for their children because they don't have that safety net, right? So, Yarrow talked about the importance of the family leave and knowing how that is actually helping to save and heal moms during their postpartum period. We're seeing on average moms are going back to work just 2 weeks after giving birth, and no one is rushing back to work just because they want to, right? It's out of the need of survival. So we need to make sure that we put this bill in place so that we can improve the birthing outcomes by giving the moms the rest and the healing and the support that they need so that they can take care of their families. No one wants to feel like if I don't go to work for the next 2 weeks, I may be put outside, right? Additionally, this is also helping to understand more about how a lot of these birth and pregnancy outcomes are really turning into morbidities and mortalities because women are not able to take care of themselves. They're not able to tap into resources that can actually keep them safe, right? And when it comes to childcare, it's the same thing, wanting to make sure that they can afford quality childcare that really meets the needs of their family. If a mom has more than one child, that in itself can create a huge barrier of not just access, but again, affordability. Me as a mom myself, I remember when my children were young and having to figure out, am I going to be able to balance 2 children under 2 in childcare and work a full-time job? That is the reality for a lot of Americans, especially across the state of New Jersey. So with the work that we're doing and the work that we're supporting with you all, we want to again empower our moms, but also inform them so that they understand the accessibility and the affordability of all of these things. It starts with them having the knowledge. It starts with them being at the table. It also starts with them acknowledging what their needs are and being able to ask for it outright, right? You never know what you can change unless you step up and you open your mouth and you ask, right? And lastly, I always tell my moms, you've been an advocate for as long as you can remember. Your advocacy even started during your pregnancy, right? So when you become a pregnant person, you are advocating for this new life to come into a better situation. You're changing your lifestyle, you're moving, you're doing all of these things to create a better future for this life that you're bringing into the world. So why not make sure that our society is also tapping into those things to secure those families and provide them with the resources that they need so that mom and that birthing person can flourish as well as their children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. I know that your time is limited tonight and you have to leave us shortly, but like Jay was saying, she's told the stories not only of her own life, but of some of the moms that she's working with. And I just want to point out to people, if you have joined us on this webinar tonight, if you have a story that comes to mind about your own life, one that is compelling, that is going to, you've been listening and say, this is how I would be impacted. We certainly would welcome you to put that in the chat. If time allows, we will be able to share a few of those, or in fact, we will be happy to contact you later because we are always looking for individuals who are willing to share what the impact of these really important policies are, because they're not just words on paper. They are things that are really going to help our moms, our kids, our families. So thanks so much, Jay. We really appreciate you and the work that you're doing. Lastly, I'd like to move to introduce to you Peter Chen. Those of you on this call may not know Peter, or maybe you do, but you are probably very familiar with the organization he is with, New Jersey Policy Perspective. Peter Chen is the Senior Policy Analyst at NJPP. Prior to joining Policy Perspective, just within the last year, I've lost track of time, Peter was Policy Counsel at Advocates for Children in New Jersey, and he's worked on child and family policy advocacy in New Jersey since 2014. So we're really happy to have him here tonight to talk about what this means in terms of the things that he works on and in terms of how this is going to be paid for and some of the additional benefits. So Peter?
Thanks, Maura. I should highlight that I'm a senior policy analyst, not the senior policy. There are others. Thanks for the introduction, Maura. And I guess I'll start with some of the revenue side stuff. I think, unfortunately, because of the way that national media works, the thing that many people know about this package is its cost. But what they don't know, and what's not frequently reported as a top line, is that this package would reduce the deficit over 10 years. Right? This is a paid for package. And the way that it's paid for is through tax increases on America's wealthiest individuals and corporations. And individuals earning under $500,000 a year will not see their taxes go up. So this is a remarkable package in terms of shifting the costs to the folks who have earned the most off the backs of Americans. Billionaires, since the pandemic have begun, have almost doubled their wealth. Their wealth has increased by 70%. Billionaires in the United States are now worth almost above $5 trillion. So I think it's only fair that they pay their fair share and support all of the essential parts of our economy and our lives that Build Back Better helps to support. I think there's unfortunately some framing around the package as this dollar amount, but there is a cost to not implementing this package, right? The cost of child poverty is high. The cost of not being able to work because you don't have childcare is high. These costs add up too, and they don't show up on the balance sheet the same way. So I think when we think about how this is being paid for, this is about taking our fair share from the folks who have made the most, and the wealthy corporations that are benefiting from have benefited from being in America for a very long time. So I think that's an important note: is who is paying for this? It's the wealthiest Americans. In terms of what this means for children and families, I think there's a reason why the child tax credit has been such a lifeline to families, and it's because it fills this important gap. Families with kids do not have cushion. They do not have a lot of financial flexibility to meet emergency expenses. And what the child tax credit has done with monthly payments has reduced child poverty, reduced child hunger, has and has helped Americans across the board. Something like 80% of New Jersey children are eligible for the child tax credit. And those benefits are going to, the benefits they receive continue down the road, right? Because not having to worry about where you're getting dinner means that you're more likely to focus in school. You're more likely to be able to live a life and meet your full potential. So all of the components of the Build Back Better package move in sync to support families and kids. And it's really important to note that childcare in New Jersey is a particularly high expense. So the typical family in New Jersey under this bill would receive, if a household that's around the state median income with one child, so in the $60,000 to $80,000 range, they would get back $10,000 to $15,000 depending on their childcare expenses. And I can tell you that that's you'd still have to pay some amount of childcare expenses, but childcare in New Jersey costs for an infant as much as does to send a kid to Rutgers in state, right? $14,000. So I think it's important to note that this is about helping families to not only meet the full potential of their kids, but also to be able to, make the most of their own livelihood. And that's part of why it's so important that that the Senate stay in session and get this thing done. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter. You just really boil it down to really make it so understandable, and to think that, childcare costs what it costs to go to Rutgers for a year is a pretty astounding statistic. So thanks for giving it some context for us. So we are going to open it up now for some Q&A. And while we'll kick it off, we welcome those of you who are on Facebook to type in a question if you'd like. Those of you on the webinar, please use the chat to be able to register a question if you'd like to have it asked, and we will do our best. We do have a few to start us off, and I'd like to ask Congressman Pallone, I hope he does not mind this question, but there's been a lot of speculation, not only about the process, but the what if, what happens, and if this bill doesn't go through. I personally believe that we will see it through, but I think back to 2017 and 2018 when hundreds of thousands of people across the country, including many here in New Jersey, mobilized and spoke out at town halls and took action to make sure that we protected access to healthcare. And that led to a wave of new congressional representatives coming into Congress. I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on how important is Build Back Better, particularly for those members who came into office during that time. I'm thinking, some here in New Jersey, some of our representatives like Congresswoman Cheryl, Congressman Malinowski, and Kim. How important is it for them and their constituents that we deliver on Build Back Better?
Well, Maura, I don't think that any of the things we discussed tonight, both what I discussed on healthcare or others added on childcare, families, initiatives, any of that. I mean, those things are all obviously supported by the entire Democratic delegation, including the new people that you mentioned. I think the problem that we have is that, most people don't realize that when we had the election in 2020, which is making this possible, that even though Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won, they won narrowly, right? And that we actually lost seats in the House of Representatives from 2018. So we have a very narrow majority, only 50-50 in the Senate, 3 seats in the House. I think it might end up being 4 in January. There's one more election up there. And you know, and the Republicans are painting all this as, you know, something like, you know, socialism or welfare or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. This is the kind of, you know, jargon that they use. And I mean, none of that is true. I mean, you know, there's nothing here that is socialist or left wing or anything of that nature. But you know, you know that influences people in the Senate. I mean, it influenced it in the House, which took us a while to get this passed. It's influencing it in the Senate, and so that's why it's taken a little longer to pass it. And I just think the most important thing in order to get this over the finish line in the Senate is to do what New Jersey Citizen Action does and say, look, this is all about affordability. This is about accessibility. This is affecting, you know, people who working class people, middle income people, right? I mean, when we talk about the Affordable Care Act, I think that these subsidies now can go to people whose income is over 90,000 with a family of 4. Now, some people might say, well, they're rich, but I mean, you know, that's not rich. I mean, by any means in New Jersey, you know, making $80,000, $90,000 a year, you still have a hard time paying your rent and you know, paying for health insurance if you have to buy it on your own. And so I just, you know, what you guys do is so important. I'm not just trying to be nice to you because I'm on this virtual call with you, but you really point out that these are just kitchen table issues that we're talking about here: healthcare, you know, childcare. I mean, you know, and so, I mean, that's the problem, is that this gets painted by the other side as somehow, you know, we're going to be like China or something, you know, and it's just not true. These are things that everybody faces unless you're extremely wealthy. These are all things that you have to worry about, whether you're going to have whether you're going to have leave if somebody gets sick, whether you're going to be able to you know, have home health care. I mean, people can't afford to pay privately for home health care. You have to be extremely wealthy to do that. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm trying.
Yeah, you certainly are. And I mean, you really summed it up well, because, you know, it is issues that are right in people's kitchens, in their homes. You know, if there's an issue here that you can't relate to, those of you on the call, you know, the time will come when maybe you can. You know, everyone is going to need access to healthcare. If you have an elderly parent, so many people, I know when I was taking care of my own mother, just trying to balance getting that home care is just a struggle, and it's a struggle for every family. So I think, you know, what you've said is something that, you know, just really goes to the heart of the matter. We do have a comment, somewhat question, from one of our participants, a retiree named Nelba, who talks about needing to use eye drops for the treatment of glaucoma. In December of 2020, she says she only paid $34 a month. But in January of 2021, that same drug went up 200% for a month's supply. And the price is now too high. My question to you, Congressman Pallone, is that the very kind of increase that these inflationary caps would help with and help give relief to consumers like Nelba?
Absolutely. I mean, during COVID, there were some drugs, both generic and name brand, that went up 800% in price. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You know, I don't want to keep taking up your time here, but you know, when my dad passed away 4 years ago, and you know, he was like probably a poster person for everything we've been talking about tonight, going to the hospital, going to rehab, going to nursing home, coming home. Sometimes he wanted to come home, sometimes because it was just my brother and me. You know, I have to watch what I say here, that, you know, men are not the best caregivers, frankly. You know, he almost preferred to be in the nursing home, you know. So what I'm saying is that, he had multiple myeloma, and I don't remember how much it was at the time, but whatever his insurance covered most of it, right? Today, Medicare is charged annually for the typical multiple myeloma patient for Riblimid, the drug Riblimid, $65,000 a year, right? Now, this is a drug that was used in the 50s for women, who were pregnant and, to ease their cramps or pain or whatever. And then we found out that it was causing birth defects, and they took it off the market. And then the company that made it realized later that it could be used for multiple myeloma. This drug has been around for 50, 60 years, $65,000 a year. How's that possible? So what I'm saying is, we have to get this under control. And yes, the inflation factor is, not everything's going to be negotiated, right? But even if it isn't, that inflation factor is a big way of trying to reduce the costs, in my opinion.
Yeah, so important. Thank you for that. I just want to mention, those of you who are listening, we do have some social media posts that we will be putting in the chat. Our message is really quite simple, and no offense to Congressman Pallone, who reported he just arrived home to take this call. Our message is, don't go home. Pass, Build Back Better. And we are asking people to tweet that, to post it to your social media pages. We will have an action going out tomorrow asking you to just let our senators, Senator Booker and Menendez, know how important this is as they are working to try to get this passed. Let them know, let them hear from you. Don't go home. We want to see this passed.
And Maura, let me mention one thing, that when we left yesterday, because we were there to vote on the debt ceiling, which, probably people are going to go to sleep if I mention that. But Nancy Pelosi and the House leadership made it absolutely clear that once this bill passes the Senate, we will come in the next day and we will pass it in the House. So, if the Senate passes it next week, we'll come back. If the Senate passes it between Christmas and New Year's, we'll immediately come back. We are going to pass that bill the next business day, if not even Saturday or Sunday, once it passes the Senate. So I didn't want to give you the wrong impression in that respect.
No, I was just teasing you, but that's great to hear. It's great for people to take into their holiday season that the House is ready to act, and that we will have this happen and have it happen quickly. I have a question for Yarrow. I know that in New Jersey, as Congressman Pallone mentioned, in healthcare, we already have paid family leave, right? And you are working with partners all across the country, and Peter is involved in this work too, around getting a national program. How does the United States compare to other countries in this? And how do you feel about the current 4-week provision that is in the bill?
Hi, Maura. Well, we're not happy about the fact that paid leave has been whittled back. We're not happy that it's being targeted as being excluded. The House had, I think, over in the House, the representatives really had to fight for its inclusion because it was taken out, right, for a period of time. And you would think, in a state where we have it, it's like, what does it matter, right? But we're talking about crazy stories we hear from folks in New Jersey. We had a father who was able to access paid leave for himself because he worked in New Jersey, but it just so happened that his wife worked across the border in Pennsylvania. So it was great. He got to take the 12 weeks of bonding leave to be with their newborn, who was actually born premature. That was wonderful, except then his wife, because she worked in Pennsylvania, had to return far too soon. So those are just like injustices that we don't want to see anywhere in the country. And we have an obligation to fight for everybody so that we can continue to, promote the idea of our ability to care for each other, because we're interconnected. Like, if we haven't learned anything in the pandemic, we've learned that, right? Our health my health is connected to your health, and so on. So yes, the U.S. is far behind. I think everyone by now hopefully understands that we're like one of virtually the only countries in the world without paid family leave. So it's time to get it done. We do have a fun little action I put in the chat. Hopefully you can see it, and we'll share this out as well afterwards. But this is a selfie to the Senate. So this is just reminding them of the faces of people who care about paid leave. It opens up so you can take a picture and post that online, and just keep the drumbeat going about how important paid leave is, so that we can hopefully keep it in the Build Back Better package.
That's great. Thank you, Yarrow. I have a question, just broad question for Peter, Congressman Pallone, and Yarrow. I know, as someone who worked on some of the healthcare provisions, like Yarrow, we were disappointed that the prescription drug provisions did not go further. I know that everyone has expressed some measure of disappointment, but my question really is, and I've come to really understand the value in this a little bit more, is in those new and breakthrough transformative policies, like for the first time ever having prescription drug negotiations and cracking the prescription drug lock, the company's lock on pricing, the taxes that you spoke about, Peter, that are now shifting to tax the wealthy and the billionaires, and things like universal pre-K, while they're not everything, do you see them as things that can be built upon in years to come? Or do you view them or think that, they really are just centered on the next couple of years, and then it's going to be a real battle? I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, every major pillar of American public investment was smaller at its inception, right? Social Security did not include farm workers, did not include seasonal workers, did not include domestic workers. Every part of, Medicare started small. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act started small, and Medicaid started small, and they have all grown into programs that support and care for a larger chunk of the country. And I think this bill has the potential to be, groundbreaking in so many different ways. I keep saying there are tiny parts of this bill that on their own would be, a sea change in entire. I mean, we haven't even talked about the climate provisions, right? We haven't even talked about the expansion of school meals programs, right? We haven't talked about housing and how this will help renters and how this will help expand housing supply so that people can afford to live places. Like, each part of this on its own would be monumental legislation. And here it is, all in one package. And there are reasons for that, like the very slim Senate majority. But there's also, I think it suggests that this is the potential to be a change in how we interact with and think about our relationship with each other, right? Like, to say, we all are here together, we are all caring for each other, and we need to support each other in doing that. That's the real signal that the bill has for me, and I hope that it's the beginning of a more hopeful future for the country. But also, we need to pass the thing first. So there's that.
There's that. Pass that thing. Congressman Pallone?
Well, I mean, I totally agree with Peter, and there's so many examples, right? I always think about the fact that we were establishing Medicare Part D, and I remember talking to Senator Kennedy at the time, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was the ACA. Maybe it was the ACA. It must have been the ACA, and he was always of the philosophy, get your foot in the door, and that was true for the ACA, right? Because we did the ACA, and it had And then we did Medicare Part D. Medicare Part D had the donut hole, but we filled the donut hole. The ACA subsidies weren't that generous, but they became more generous. We talked about today. And I think the same thing is true for prescription drugs. Okay, it doesn't have the patented drugs that are still under patent, but once you get the precedent established that the government can negotiate prices, I don't think it's as hard to go back and say, well, they should negotiate things during the patent period. So yeah, I think the most important thing is to set the precedent and get people in the government used to playing this role, if you will.
Great insights and great comments. I want to segue now. We have one last thing, and I do want to mention this so that it doesn't go unspoken. Peter said, talking about climate change, huge piece of Build Back Better as well. And I know Congressman Pallone, your committee and you individually have worked really hard on that. We have a comment really in the chat, and I wanted to use this to segue to tell you who are listening tonight what you can expect from here. If you haven't copied or cut and pasted the actions and the tweets from the chat, we are going to make them available to you by sending them out to everyone who registered for this webinar. We will be sending out an action alert tomorrow with additional information. And for those who ask the question, how can you make a difference in a town hall in your area or in other venues to help educate people and bring to light all of the many benefits of the Build Back Better bill? We do have materials, and we will link to that in the follow-up that we send to you. Our message to you tonight, as we all look to wind down, take a little break, get ready for a new year, is to reinforce the message to our senators who are working to pass this. Don't go home. Build Back Better. Pass it now. Thank your representatives like Congressman Pallone and others who did so much work to get this through the House, because together we are going to hold these webinars in 2022 to talk about the implementation of Build Back Better. So we really thank all of you for being with us tonight. We wish you all a great holiday season and a very good new year, one in which we are going to be building up one another through Build Back Better. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.